I'm here this afternoon with Jeff Judson here in San Antonio. Jeff, introduce yourself to my audience. Kind of give us an idea of your background politically, business, so forth.
All right. Well, I'm a eighth generation Texan.
Good.
My family moved here. Uh, well, right before the Battle of the Alamo, and right after.
All right.
And so we've been here in San Antonio for a long time.
Truly.
I have been involved in politics and public policy really my whole life. I went to UT Austin and had a very liberal government professor, and I really was fairly politically naive and politically agnostic at that point until that liberal government professor tried to paint a picture of society that I knew was wrong. And instead of indoctrinating me into becoming a liberal, as I'm sure his intention was, he created a conservative activist on that day in class.
Good for him.
So I started getting a lot more interested in politics in college and got an internship with Senator John Tower right out of college. Then was hired on as a special assistant on his staff right at the end of his term. Worked on the House side for Tom Leffler, who used to represent San Angelo. Answered a lot of constituent mail from constituents in San Angelo. And then Tom ran for governor. I traveled with him across Texas when he ran for governor. That was unsuccessful, so he retired. And then I went to work for Tom DeLay, was his chief legislative assistant up until 1989. So the Republicans were still in the minority during that time. I moved over and got a political appointment in the George H.W. Bush administration in the energy department. So I worked on nuclear defense issues and the national energy strategy, and did that for about 3 years.
Interesting.
Working, I was a media spokesperson, a congressional liaison for the nuclear defense program, and so that was very, very interesting. About the time I was 30 years old, my wife and I had met in Tom Leffler's office, and she's a Texan also, and from San Antonio. We decided before we started having kids, they probably ought to be born on Texas soil instead of inside the Beltway in D.C. So we moved back to Texas in 1992, and I worked at USAA, the big insurance company.
They're based here in San Antonio, aren't they?
They're in northwest San Antonio.
Saw the big building with yeah.
And worked there, did regulatory affairs, helped kind of get the anti-lawsuit abuse movement going, which was just getting started at the time. And then I worked for the chairman. The chairman of USAA was a guy named Robert McDermott, and when he retired, I left USAA and became the president of the Texas Public Policy Foundation. So it's a very influential think tank, particularly now. It became very influential. I was there for 8 years, and as the conservative movement grew in Texas, we were kind of right there when that happened, and more Republicans were getting elected, and more elected officials in Washington and Austin cared about what we wrote about, and so.
What type of topics were of interest to,
and
still are?
So we did a lot of research on school choice, on lawsuit abuse, on transportation issues, and it was in 2000 that I defeated the first wasteful light rail program that was up for a vote here in San Antonio, and we really led the opposition on that.
Very good.
And then I did that just again, leading a coalition of people and groups. Just this year, there was a ballot item on we amended the city charter to require a vote on rail in the future. So
good.
So I've killed it twice, and so that's where I really became a deep conservative, was when I worked at the Texas Public Policy Foundation, because its whole purpose is just to promote limited government, free enterprise, private property rights, and individual responsibility. And I was working with basically the free market movement all across the country. All the think tanks in every state, we all worked together and traded information and helped each other grow. And that's where I learned the movement, learned issues, learned all the great scholars within the conservative movement, and that I really cut my teeth in.
Sounds like
good policy during that period of my life.
Really? When did you leave there?
So I left there at the end of 2002
Okay.
and decided to open up my own public policy consultancy.
Okay.
And I was committed to continuing to work on limited government, free market issues. And so I had corporate clients who had a limited government, free market, a regulatory issue or a tax issue or something that they wanted fixed. And I would go and put together coalitions of conservative groups, grassroots organizations, and think tanks and academics to create the momentum to do these good economic and policy changes that my clients wanted. And it was great. They put a lot of money into the movement, conservative movement, and got a lot of good things changed. I worked on telecom deregulation, and on deregulating medical device, regulations, and property and casualty insurance reform. Fought the global warming regulations in California, and so it was all really good stuff. I'm very proud of working on.
Yeah. Sounds like a lot of background there.
So that brings me to today. I was also elected 4 times to the Almas Park City Council. So we're sitting in Almas Park right now.
I saw that. I never realized that in the heart, virtually, of San Antonio, there is a little independent, I guess incorporated little town.
Well, there's 3 of them.
Really?
There's Almas Park, Alamo Heights, and Terrell Hills, and they were all right on the outskirts of town in the 1920s.
Sure.
And they didn't like what the big city of San Antonio was doing with their tax dollars, and they wanted to incorporate their own little cities, which was great because our city, our taxes are low because we have a police department, a fire department, a sanitation department, and we keep our streets smooth, and that's all we do. We don't do anything else. We don't have a we
don't have a bureaucracy?
A big bureaucracy, and so it's really nice. We get really excellent services, and it's just the amount of government we want to pay for and nothing more. So I wish we could do
What
that.
a wild concept. Wow. Is it duplicatable?
Well, in small towns, actually a friend of mine has done research on this and has found that the optimal size for a city, when you have economies of scale and you're using your money wisely, is a population of about 5,000. Once you get above 5,000, the cities tend to start adding staff and bureaucratic functions beyond beyond the core functions, and you start losing your economies after that.
Wow.
So we're a city of about 2,400 people, so we're right in the sweet spot.
Wow. How nice. Well, that was something new for me to discover because I didn't realize that. I visited San Antonio all my life. Had an aunt that lived here, down in the heart of San Antonio, but I never knew. But anyway, the reason I'm here today is you have decided to run to represent your area at the state level, and you're in a unique race because you are opposing Joe Strauss, who happens to be Speaker of the House. So you're going to get a little extra attention, I would imagine. Why on earth did you decide to run for office?
Well, it was something I've been thinking about, my wife and I have been talking about, and people have been asking me to do for several years. And my wife and I both just came to the conclusion that we had just had to do it. The time for our country is now. We're losing our country, and what happens in the next 14 months is going to determine, really, I mean, it's so scary. It's going to determine kind of what kind of life my kids have, what kind of country they're going to grow up in.
Absolutely.
And Texas is a little bit better off than Washington, D.C. What goes on in Austin is maybe a little bit more functional than Washington, D.C., but there's still a lot of room for improvement. And I just felt like I had to do it. It's not, I've been involved in politics and public policy my whole life, and I've always felt like I could make as big or a bigger difference not being an elected official than being an elected official. If I was going to run for office, if that had been my dream, I would have done it a long time ago. But
Right.
There's a lot of ways to influence the culture and society and public policy and not have to run for office. It came to a point where I just knew I had to do this.
Yeah.
There was no choice. And I had some direct experiences in the legislative session in Austin over the last 2 sessions that really cemented that
Any
idea.
particular bills that you were following?
Yeah, I was working on a number of bills. I was very involved on the school choice front.
Okay.
And that was one where one of the first issues I worked on when I worked at the Texas Public Policy Foundation was school choice.
Mm-hmm.
That was in 1994, the 95 legislative session. So we've been talking about school choice
A
for
long time.
20 years.
Yeah.
And 27 other states have enacted 45 different school choice programs around the country. It's 25 years old. It's been studied. It's proven that it helps kids. It helps the public schools that lose kids. They improve under school choice. They pay their teachers more. I could just go on and on how it's proven to help the whole system, and the kids that have choice and the kids that are left behind improve. The Republican Party had it on the Republican primary ballot in 2013, and 84% of Republican primary voters said they wanted school choice.
Yeah.
And the Lieutenant Governor made it a priority issue. It passed the Texas Senate with a very large bipartisan majority, and it could not even get a hearing in the House.
Yeah. We had a lot of bills that needed to get heard and make it to the floor that never made it there this session.
Right. And and sometimes it takes more than one session to get things done, but but there was too many bills where I'd put them in the no-brainer category. There was like
American Laws for American Courts?
American Laws for American Courts. That one should not have died. That should have been a no-brainer. The worst thing anybody could say about ALAC was that it was unnecessary. Well, okay, fine then, but if it was necessary, which I think it was.
Yes. Yes.
What's the big loss if we pass a bill that's unnecessary? Let's be on the safe side.
Yeah.
On something like that.
It has definitely, the lack thereof has impacted
Yeah.
lives, and it's documented. So,
Yeah.
So, are there particular issues other than school choice that are of particular interest to you that you'd like to see happen during your tenure?
Well, I'm very passionate about transportation issues. I think that's one of the, I don't really, I enjoy police protection, and my kids go to public school. They started in a private Christian school, and eventually we put them on a public school. In fact, my wife's on the school board here in the Alamo Heights School District. But I don't, the main government function that I use and most people use on a daily basis is our streets and roads.
Yes.
And traffic congestion is a real issue.
Yes.
And it's one of the worst areas of cronyism in government. And this is the thing that people are very frustrated with in Washington and in Austin.
Yes.
And it's the waste, when we don't have enough dollars supposedly to build the road capacity that we need, but yet they're wasting money and they're spending money on things that enrich well-connected people, and they leave us in traffic congestion. And so I'm very, very passionate about stopping the building of irrational toll roads that don't make any sense. These stupid transit projects that cost billions of dollars and have no effect on mobility. They're all about reforming society to something that nobody wants and nobody will ever live, where we're riding our bicycles to work in July and
It's part of the
Texas,
Agenda
or
21, I think, out of the
taking-
UN.
taking transit to work. I mean,
Yeah.
we're just not going to do that. You know, there's a role for transit, and but this is just a stupid pipe dream, and we don't have the billions of dollars to waste. So
I was noticing something online about proposed toll roads here in San Antonio, and I was floored at the number of roads that potentially were being looked at to become toll roads.
yeah,
And the taxpayers have already paid for the roads,
right.
and now they're going to pay for them again
Yeah.
for somebody. And I'd hate to think what that would cost for the average person that uses any of the main arteries, the 1604, 281, and I think there were several others on that list.
Well, you've got these highways like IH-10 going to, up in your direction.
Yes.
You've got all this flat right-of-way, all this grass that they have to mow. It is so inexpensive to just lay more lanes of pavement there. It's so inexpensive. But once they do it as a toll road, they have to segregate the road, have to have all the back office systems, the cameras and all the electronics, and then the people in the bill collection agencies and everything. And it's the most expensive way to build a road.
Yeah.
And all they have to do is just put more lanes right there. Why would you spend, so much more to build a road that then we have to pay for, on and on and on? I think if we use the money we have more wisely, that we could build the capacity that we need.
Yeah, absolutely. What are some other areas of interest?
Well, school finance is a very big deal.
Okay.
This is one where I think if Joe Strauss is speaker, Texas will look the school finance law that's passed will look very different than if we had somebody else in that position. As you may know, there's a lawsuit that the school districts have filed against the state. This is now they've done 4 or 5 lawsuits against the state.
I'm not familiar, so bring me up to speed.
Well, the public schools, with our tax dollars, hire expensive attorneys, and they sue the state for more money, because to them that's the answer to everything that isn't working in education. The problem is, every time they file a lawsuit, the state agrees, okay, we'll give you more money, including all your attorney's fees, and the more money doesn't solve the problem. We
No.
still have massive failure across the system.
Yes.
And you have pockets of really good schools, and you have lots and lots of really bad schools, and they don't improve with more money. If you put more money into a broken system, you might break it even more.
That's right.
And so so I've been working with a group of people who have intervened in that lawsuit that are arguing for more efficiency. The
Good.
Texas Constitution clearly states that the state must provide, this is a quote, the state must provide an efficient system of public free schools. It doesn't, the Supreme Court has said that in past lawsuits that it doesn't mean that the state has to provide a government school, a government education for every child. They just need to make sure there's a system that is capable of educating all the students. It can be public or
Very
private.
interesting. Yeah.
But it has to be efficient. no one has ever sued the school districts, sued the state on the basis of efficiency until now. So this intervener group jumped in, and they're suing the state, saying you have to be efficient. And the Texas Supreme Court has actually asked for someone to raise that issue in a lawsuit, and
Wow.
nobody ever has until now.
How do you gauge efficiency?
Well, you have a lot to compare to. You have private schools, you have charter schools,
Yes.
you have, some public schools that operate more efficiently than others,
Right.
and you have a lot of comparison. You have similar student bodies and radically different outcomes. So what's the difference? Well, it isn't just give more money to the people who are failing. That is not the answer. But I feel certain that there's a lot of lawmakers that that is the answer, and we will end up spending a lot more money on our education system if the right people aren't in office. So that's one issue that I really, really want to work on. And we're as pro-public school as you can get. Both of my younger kids are still in public school, and my wife is very, very involved in making that school a good school. And they have, unfortunately, our school district is a property wealthy district. They give roughly 40% of all their taxes back to Robin Hood to be spent in other districts. They got a huge increase in tax revenues because of property valuation increases, and all of it plus some was taken away by the state. So it's just such an irrational system that we have. We've got to do something to fix that.
Do you think somebody can just yell stop and make everything stop so we can go in and relook at the budget and reorganize? It does just seem like things are totally out of control because Peter's paying Paul and Paul's paying Steve, and it all flips, and then, oh, well, we want our money back, and it's so confusing.
Well, and then the public schools, of course, they use our tax dollars to hire lawyers to sue the state for more money,
Which is the taxpayer.
And then they use our tax dollars to hire. Last legislative session, 2013, they had 150 lobbyists.
That's all?
150 lobbyists paid for with our tax dollars that are up there every single day of the session and all the days in between the sessions, telling lawmakers, we need more money, we need more money, we need more money. Less testing, more money, less, and it just needs to stop.
Yeah.
We've got to go a different direction.
Yeah. Transportation, education. What's another area?
Well, certainly tax policy. I do think property taxes are, Texas has the 6th highest property taxes in the country. Of all the states, we're number 6.
That's not a number to be proud of.
It's way too high. And while we have a fairly conservative state government, our municipal level government is just going crazy. We have these awful situations in Houston where they're subpoenaing the sermons of
it started
pastors to
San Antonio with the non-discrimination order here, then to Houston, then to Plano.
Right.
And who knows where next.
Yeah. And if you look at big government liberalism, it is alive and well in our big cities and some of our smaller cities in Texas. No different from San Francisco or any place else. And in San Antonio, our commissioner's court here in Bexar County just announced that they were, the newspaper said they were not going to raise taxes. Well, what they did was they kept the tax rate the same, which meant that millions and millions of dollars from new property and from the increased valuations of existing property pours into their coffers, and government just grows and grows and grows, and they keep telling people, well, I never raised taxes. Well, you did. And when I was on city council in Almus Park, we lowered the tax rate every single year to basically the effective rate, which is we had the same amount of money that came in year over year, adjusted for inflation.
Sure.
And
But as the prices of the homes went up or property,
the
you
tax
went
rate
down.
went down.
Right.
And so our city government is essentially the same size as it was 10, 15 years ago.
That's wonderful.
And that's the way it should be. In fact, we had a really old city hall that was run down, and we needed to build a new one. Whenever it would rain, the water would bubble up through the floor, and it was
That's not really good.
we didn't have a place to hold drunks when we catch them and book them. We had a wooden chair, and we would handcuff them to this chair. That was the holding cell, So we did need a new city hall and a new police station, but I was on city council at the time, and I insisted that when we were drawing up the plans for the city hall, that it have no more office space for staff than what we currently had, because we didn't need any more staff. We needed to modernize the facility, but we didn't need to add on a whole bunch of square space so that we could grow into it with hiring more people.
Well, you're landlocked. Your city's not going to get any larger
Right.
either.
Right.
So
we're the size we're always going to be. So.
yeah, that's true. Because San Antonio just went right around you.
Yeah.
So yesterday we were at a meeting in Austin, and that's where I first met you, that the TPPF put on, having to do with forced annexation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting to be sitting in a community that did not get annexed. It made its own municipality.
Right.
What are your thoughts on the bill that Senator Campbell and Representative Huberty were talking about?
It's an excellent bill. I think annexation is a means for these liberal cities to capture more tax revenue and fund the things they shouldn't be doing to begin with. People choose where to live, and if they wanted to live in the city, there's plenty of opportunities for them to have bought a home or a piece of property in the city limits, and they chose not to do that, and they should not be forced to do that unless they wish to. I would like, one of the things that TPPF has championed is the Liberty City movement, where they encourage cities to either form or reform to follow a basic set of conservative principles about restraining the growth of government and the proper role of government. And I'd like for more of these small cities to incorporate and become liberty cities instead of being swallowed up by these big mammoth cities like San Antonio to fuel their
That's really the only way they can
liberalism.
protect themselves from this happening, isn't it?
Right, it is, and one of the things I pointed out yesterday was that one of the things is part of Agenda 21, but one of the things that cities want to do is limit growth. They hate what they call urban sprawl, which is really finding cheap available land so that people can afford to live in a nice home with a 2-car garage and a yard. That's what almost everybody wants to live, in a house with a yard and a garage and a nice neighborhood.
Yeah.
And there are some people that want to live in a downtown urban setting in a condominium or something, and that's fine, but it's a small sliver of the market.
Right.
But the liberal planners want everybody to live like that, as if it's just that's the more efficient way to live, and it really isn't. There's nothing more efficient about it. And there's a lot of land in Texas. We're not running out of land.
No. I see a lot of it between here and San Angelo.
There's plenty of land. There's nothing inefficient about building new homes on available land, but they want to control growth, and they're using, in San Antonio, they're using annexation policy to annex areas so that they can stop the growth in those areas. Not just capture the tax revenue, but capture the tax revenue and then tell every landowner in those annexed areas, sorry, your land is going to be rural, vacant land forever. In the end, This has happened on the south side of San Antonio, where they've
Wow.
taken 50,000 acres around the Toyota plant, and they have basically said no development, except you can have this kind of development here and this kind of development here, and it never matches what the market wants or it can afford to build. And so there's been virtually no development in this 50,000 acres.
Wow.
And the poor people who own that land have just, all the value of their land is gone.
Yeah.
There's one
Whoa.
Hispanic family that lives down there. He was I think he worked for the Postal Service. They had, like 100 acres or something, and he dry farmed it, grew corn or milo or something on it. They don't have water rights. They don't have a well to irrigate with or anything. It was just dry farming, but they were going to sell that land for housing, because San Antonio was growing in that direction, and then they heard the Toyota plant was coming, and it was great, and they could build homes on this land. It was perfect for homes, right, kind of fairly close to the Medina River, and they did that zoning thing, and they just basically said your land will be rural and forever, and so their whole retirement plan just went poof.
Whoa.
And there
That's
was
right.
no compensation. To me, that would be a taking.
Yeah, absolutely.
The government took the value of their property, and they will get no compensation for that, and it's just wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. With Joe Strauss having been the speaker for quite a while, he is a Republican, but he has a different set of priorities, let's say, that he tries to get through there. For your particular district, are there things that you feel that need to be accomplished for your constituents here that hasn't been well represented in Austin?
Well, just kind of transportation is clearly one.
Oh, definitely, yes.
We're growing very fast, and we need to add capacity. And,
What's the population now of the San Antonio area?
It's about 1.2 million, I believe, and if with this annexation, it'll be 1.4 or something like that.
That's
But you look at the whole metropolitan area, it's even more than that. But clearly, transportation is a key issue. Education, like I said, and school finance, and this whole issue about testing. There's no one answer on whether or not we should have testing in schools. There are some really low-performing schools that, were it not for testing, parents wouldn't know how bad the school was doing. The state wouldn't know how bad they were doing. We would have no way of measuring improvement. Testing is not needed nearly as much in the school that we go to, because there's so much parental involvement, and there's just a culture there that they tend to do a better job, and testing is not as required for accountability reasons. They're held accountable through other means, but anyway, so that debate goes on and on. We add more tests, and then we take them away, and then we add them, and we take them away, and then there's the big debate about what's in the test, and then you start getting political correctness in the testing criteria, and that's why we need school choice, is so that parents have a much larger role in driving what the schools are doing.
right.
Because currently a school has to listen to what the Federal Department of Education says, and what the state TEA says, and what the teachers unions say, and what all the different trade associations say, and then and parents are in there somewhere, but
Maybe. If we have to have them.
Right. And parents should be the driving factor, because
Yes, those are their children.
very focused on their kid learning in the most efficient, effective manner. And there are some parents who don't care, and there's some parents who don't want their kids to have any homework, but they're a small minority, and the really involved parents that really care about their kids' education, if they had the power of a normal consumer in any other market we have,
Yes.
they would drive excellence, and the schools would listen first to parents, and then everybody else would be below that. And
Excellent point.
So
Excellent.
I think school choice is the most important thing to do to improve the public schools.
School's your passion, I can tell.
Yeah.
Really is. That and
'Cause
transportation.
I've just been working on this issue for so long.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of tired of working on it.
So I just want to get it done.
Get it done. But it's been proven. It's been so proven around the country that it really drives improvement. There was a woman with Harvard who did a study that showed that when 6% of a school of the student body of let me rephrase that. When a school loses 6% of their student body to school choice, they start really focusing on why those kids are leaving. And they start addressing those issues, be they academic or safety, gang problems, or poor facilities, or whatever it is.
Right.
They go, wow, we've got to really focus on this. Whereas before the kids had the option to leave, there was something else to work on.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And
But the money was leaving.
the money was leaving, it got their attention.
Yes.
And so they fixed those problems.
Yeah.
And the research shows that their test scores go up. Their teachers, they have to pay their teachers more because parents care more about teachers than anything else that's going on in the classroom. And they don't want money spent on more administrators. They want better teachers.
Yeah.
So teachers make more money. The students get taught better. You know, it drives improvement, just like it does in every other sector of the economy.
How closely does the senators and representatives work with the State Board of Education?
Well, I guess it really depends upon the senators and the reps. Some of them don't like the State Board of Education. They'd like to centralize those decisions. I think the State Board is a very important check on the power of the bureaucracy, that you have elected officials that are making decisions on curriculum and stuff. I
Right.
think that's very important to maintain. But even the State Board of Education has these endless debates about things that, if parents had more power to choose the education of their children, it would kind of take care of itself. The parents would choose the schools that had the best textbooks.
Yeah.
And they don't want political correctness. They want good history,
Yeah.
good math, good English and grammar, and they would go
Cursive
there.
writing.
Cursive writing.
That's just crazy that's gone.
That's what they would choose, and we wouldn't have to have a centralized debate over, well, should we do this or that? We don't have those kind of debates with grocery stores or automobiles or so many other things. The consumers drive excellence.
Yeah. That's really a strong statement.
And actually, one other point about that is that K through 12, or primary and secondary education, is the only government entitlement that we deliver through a government-only system. If you look at every other thing that the government does, it's done in a competitive, market-driven system. So healthcare is delivered by private doctors and mostly private hospitals. Higher education is delivered through a series of universities that rely on private tuition, and you can get government subsidies and grants to go to private or public colleges and universities. The GI Bill can be used at private or public universities. Food stamps are used at private grocery stores, and so consumers, Medicare, Medicaid, all that,
Yeah.
consumers drive excellence in all those systems. Only primary and secondary education do we have a system that's only delivered through government organizations.
Unless there's choice. Unless the
there's
parents
choice.
are willing to pay double taxation
Right.
by paying additionally out of their pocket
Right.
for faith-based education or other private schools.
Right.
Fortunately, charter schools have begun to give that option, and
Right.
while there's a few charter schools that are challenging, there are some really good ones too.
Well, and there's
out there.
100,000 students on the waiting list to get into charter schools.
Yeah, we just started one out of our church in San Angelo, and it's just launched its 7th year, I think,
Yeah,
this season. So, and doing well.
and if it isn't doing well, they won't be in business long.
No, we've expanded. They've opened in Midland, Arlington, and this year Abilene. So
Yeah.
it's doing well. So, any closing thoughts? Anything else that you would like to share?
No, I just I think people are groaning for our country right now.
Donald Trump is showing that, and
Yeah, and the
the
reason that Donald Trump and Ted Cruz are both rising in popularity is because they are speaking the truth. They're saying things that no one's been allowed to say before without getting slapped down by the mainstream media.
oh yeah,
But yet they're saying it, and they're getting away with it, and people are just hungry for the truth.
yes.
They just want the truth. They don't want spin. They don't want to. So anyway,
That's not spending is not the answer to anything.
No. I said spin. They don't want.
Oh, the spin.
They don't want
S-P-I-N.
the spin. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we want authentic, honest people in government. And I just think this is such an important time for our country and our state. And,
Critical.
And I hope everybody that is watching this steps up in some way, either to defend somebody who's doing the right thing, or to go in and get involved directly themselves, or to write a check to somebody who needs your support, that's running for office, or what have you. Do something, because we just have like 14 months to get this right. And if we don't make some major changes in our country,
It's scary to think. Do y'all have a lot of voter apathy here in your area?
Probably not any more than any place else, but there's a lot all
Yeah.
over.
That seems to be the challenge.
Yeah.
And Pew Research has shown that out of Christians, only 50% are even registered to vote, and out of those 50%, only 50% of those vote. So 1 in 4 Christian votes.
Yeah.
What an amazing difference if we could just get the Christians to arise and educate themselves on the topic and get out and vote.
Well, and this is one of the things that it's a little bit our fault that we're where we are today, because we've told, our churches have said we're not going to talk about, any kind of public policy or political issues in church. That's just not allowed.
Yeah. We're gonna have to.
Yet that's where there's so much evil is taking place in the political realm, and yet that's off limits to talk about. And why is that? That's just wrong. And so it's allowed evil to flourish in many sectors of society, and our churches have not been part of the conversation. They need to be.
Right. Well, it used to be that's where you went to find out about the issues and what was going on and which way to think on it based on biblical standards.
Right.
And that 501c3 has gotten in the way. So a lot of people are talking about maybe that's something we don't really need anymore for our churches. So I'm not an advocate of that. I'd like for it to stay tax deductible and everything, but it shouldn't stop us from being who God called us to be.
Right. Maybe we do need a different model.
Yeah.
Maybe every church needs to become a for-profit organization with a political action committee, so they can just say whatever they want to say.
That's right. Absolutely.
And then have a nonprofit that supports, most
The
of
widows
what
and
they do or
orphans.
something.
Yeah.
I don't know, but
We'll solve that the next time.
although if Ted Cruz gets elected president and he enacts a flat tax, we can get rid of the IRS, and our churches won't have to worry about being shut down by the IRS.
That's right. That's right. Jeff, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. I have really appreciated it and look forward to visiting with you again in the future.
Well, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.